He thought his badge made him untouchable until he brought the wrong woman to court. This story exposes how power, arrogance, and corruption can collapse in front of truth and courage. It is a gripping courtroom drama where a respected officer believes his uniform places him above consequences, until a woman he underestimated turns the justice system into a mirror, forcing him to face his own crimes. This narrative is designed to keep viewers emotionally hooked, delivering suspense, moral weight, and a shocking ending that proves no badge is stronger than truth. He always believed the badge was armor. From the first day he pinned it to his chest, Daniel crosswalked differently, spoke differently, looked at people differently. The badge didn't just represent law. To him, it was authority carved into metal, permission forged by the state, a shield that separated him from ordinary consequences. Years on the force had taught him that rules bent easily for men like him, that reports could be adjusted, statements were written, silence bought, or forced. He had learned which judges were tired, which prosecutors were careless, which witnesses were afraid. By the time he reached his 40s, Daniel no longer asked whether something was right or wrong. He asked only whether it could be proven. And most of the time, it couldn't, until the night he crossed paths with Maya Hale. Maya was not loud. She didn't shout or threaten. She didn't cry in public or beg for mercy. That was the first thing Daniel misjudged. He met her during what should have been a routine stop. Late evening, quiet street, no cameras nearby except the one he claimed was malfunctioning. To Daniel, she was just another civilian, another file that would close itself. To Maya, it was the night her life split into before and after. She followed every instruction, kept her hands visible, spoke calmly. None of it mattered. When power is drunk on itself, compliance only feeds the appetite. Daniel's report later described her as uncooperative, verbally aggressive, suspicious. The language was clean, professional, convincing. It always was. Maya knew the truth would sound unbelievable against a decorated officer's word. She also knew that silence would be easier. For days she considered it. She imagined the looks, the doubts, the whispered questions about what she must have done to deserve it. She imagined the badge gleaming under courtroom lights, the quiet nods of men who trusted uniforms more than voices. But Maya had built her life on something Daniel didn't recognize: patience and preparation. She documented everything. She requested medical records, saved timestamps, recorded her own memories before time could blur them. She didn't go to the media. She didn't post online. She went somewhere far more dangerous for a man like Daniel: the law. When the notice arrived that Maya was pressing charges, Daniel laughed. He laughed in the locker room, in his car, in his kitchen while pouring a drink. He had been accused before. Complaints vanished. Internal reviews concluded with no findings. He had friends in the right places. He told himself this would be no different. He didn't realize Maya wasn't attacking him emotionally. She was dismantling him methodically. The courtroom was where Daniel felt strongest. He had testified dozens of times, his voice steady, posture confident, eyes trained to project honesty. Jurors trusted him instinctively. Prosecutors leaned on his experience. Judges respected his service record. When he walked into court for the first hearing, he expected fear in Maya's eyes. Instead, he saw something unsettling: calm. Not resignation. Not anxiety. Calm. That was the first crack. Maya's attorney didn't rush. He didn't grandstand. He let Daniel speak. He let him explain procedures, justify decisions, describe events in precise detail. Daniel spoke fluently, smoothly, weaving his narrative with practiced ease. Each word felt like a brick reinforcing his defense. But Maya's attorney was building something else entirely. He introduced records Daniel hadn't considered important: dispatch logs, maintenance requests for body cameras, time discrepancies so small they seemed meaningless until aligned side by side, witness statements from people Daniel assumed hadn't seen anything: a nearby shop owner, a delivery driver, a resident who had heard, not seen, but remembered exact times. The courtroom atmosphere shifted slowly, almost imperceptibly, like pressure changing before a storm. Daniel felt it but dismissed it. He had an answer for everything. Until Maya took the stand. She didn't dramatize. She didn't embellish. She spoke as if reciting a memory she had already made peace with. Her voice never shook. She described Daniel's words exactly as he'd spoken them, phrases he had used casually, confidently, believing no one would ever repeat them. Hearing them aloud, stripped of authority, they sounded different, cruel, calculated, human in the worst way. Daniel watched jurors lean forward, not out of pity, but attention. They weren't looking at Maya as a victim. They were looking at her as a witness. That distinction terrified him. The cross-examination was where Daniel expected redemption. He had broken witnesses before, watched them unravel under pressure. But Maya didn't argue. She didn't resist. She corrected gently when statements were inaccurate. She admitted when she didn't remember something exactly. She never tried to sound perfect. That honesty did more damage than any accusation. Then came the evidence Daniel didn't know existed. Audio, not from his camera, but from Maya's phone, accidentally triggered, recording fragments, enough to confirm tone, timing, presence. Not enough to tell the whole story, but enough to contradict his report. The room felt smaller. Daniel's attorney objected, argued admissibility, chain of custody. The judge listened, then allowed it. Daniel felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest, not anger, not confidence, but fear. Real fear, the kind that doesn't respond to rank or reputation. As days passed, more details surfaced. Past complaints re-examined under new scrutiny. Patterns identified where once there had been isolated incidents. Daniel realized too late that his greatest shield, his history, was now his heaviest weight. The badge that once protected him now connected him to every decision he had buried. The prosecution never called him a monster. They didn't need to. They let the story tell itself. They showed how power unchallenged becomes entitlement, how entitlement becomes abuse, how abuse hides behind procedure. When Daniel finally testified, his voice betrayed him. Not with stutters, but with certainty that no longer convinced. He answered quickly, defensively, correcting questions instead of responding. Jurors noticed. The man who once embodied authority now looked like someone protecting something fragile. Maya watched without expression. She didn't need revenge. She needed acknowledgement. The verdict didn't come quickly. Deliberation stretched, silence heavy. When the jury returned, Daniel stood straight, forcing composure. He told himself even if this went badly, appeals existed, connections existed. The foreperson's voice was steady, guilty. The word echoed differently than Daniel expected. It wasn't loud. It was final. In that moment, the badge meant nothing. It didn't shine. It didn't shield. It didn't speak for him. It lay somewhere unseen, reduced to metal without authority. Maya exhaled, not in relief, but closure. Justice hadn't restored what was lost, but it had named what was taken. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited, questions shouted. Maya said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence now carried weight. Daniel was escorted away, no longer as an officer, but as a man facing consequences he once believed were reserved for others. The story didn't end with applause or celebration. It ended with a quiet understanding. Power only survives in darkness, and the moment it's forced into the light, it must answer like anyone else. The badge had never made him untouchable. It had only delayed the moment when truth finally reached him.